picture this. You're standing in a vast, empty desert at night.
Right.
And the air is just freezing cold. It's carrying this really sharp scent of, sagebrush and rain.
Yeah, that distinct desert smell.
Exactly. And the wind is absolutely howling across this barren New Mexico mesa, just lashing against a frail steel tower that's rising 100 feet into the darkness.
He's just out there in the middle of nowhere.
Completely isolated. And at the top of that tower sits this tangled, wire-covered metal sphere.
Right.
Meanwhile, miles away, you have these men sitting in concrete bunkers, staring into the dark. I mean, their breathing is shallow. Their hearts are just pounding against their ribs.
The tension must have been unbelievable.
Oh, absolutely. It's a profound, almost ancient kind of dark. And yet, this absolute silence, this deep and undisturbed night, is about to be violently consumed by the literal fire of 1,000 suns.
It's chilling when you frame it like that. And, the ancient Greeks actually had a myth that maps so perfectly onto this moment, it's almost eerie. Yeah, they told the story of Prometheus. He was the Titan who basically defied the gods to steal fire and gift it to humanity.
Right, because before that, humans were just sort of shivering in the dark, completely helpless.
Exactly. And the fire Prometheus brought wasn't just warmth, it represented technology, it was civilization. It was the power to forge weapons and basically bend the physical world to their will.
Which is a massive leap forward.
It is. But the gods do not tolerate mortals possessing divine power.
No, they don't.
They really don't.
So for his transgression, Prometheus was chained to a rock, and an eagle came and tore out his liver every single day for all eternity.
Oh, man.
Yeah. It was a gift of unimaginable power, followed by just unimaginable punishment.
And that is exactly what we are exploring today in this deep dive.
Yeah.
You are about to step into the life, the mind, and the ultimate tragedy of an American Prometheus.
A man who essentially brought a new, terrifying fire to mankind.
Right. And who spent the rest of his life enduring the punishment for that very gift.
Yeah. But, to really understand the man who built the atomic bomb and the bureaucratic assassins who eventually destroyed him, we can't just start in that desert.
No, we have to go way back.
Right. We have to rewind to the 1920s. We have to travel to the damp stone corridors of Cambridge University in England.
Very different vibe from the New Mexico desert.
Completely. Because there we find a very fragile, emotionally stunted young man in his early 20s. I mean, he is brilliant, but he is completely, utterly falling apart.
He really is. At this point in his life, he is a long, long way from the confident, charismatic leader he will eventually become.
Yeah, he's basically just a mess.
Total mess.
Yeah.
He is suffering from intense homesickness, for one, and just a deep, agonizing anxiety.
Right.
He's enrolled in this experimental chemistry program, and it is a complete disaster for him.
Like, how bad?
Oh, he is disastrously clumsy. We're talking about a student who is constantly breaking beakers, failing basic lab procedures, and just drawing the intense irritation of his tutors.
Wait, okay, hold on. If he's a genius, which we know he is, why is he failing basic chemistry?
Well, because his genius isn't mechanical. It's not about his hands. It's entirely abstract.
I see.
He is trying to force his mind, which operates on this vast theoretical plane, to conform to the rigid, practical demands of a chemistry lab.
Right, pouring liquids and measuring things.
Exactly. The physical world is actually a barrier to him. So while he is fumbling with test tubes, his mind is just elsewhere.
That makes sense.
He's lying awake at night, severely sleep-deprived, practically vibrating with nervous energy.
Oh, wow.
And he doesn't just think about physics, right?
No.
He visualizes it. He is plagued by these overwhelming, beautiful, and sometimes truly terrifying visions of a hidden universe.
What kind of vision?
Like he sees energy waves. He visualizes vibrating particles moving like fireflies in the dark. He can literally picture stars collapsing in on themselves in the vacuum of space.
So it's almost like, imagine you have a musical prodigy, right? Someone who can hear entire, complex, sweeping symphonies in his head. Every single string, every horn.
Yeah, a total savant.
But instead of letting him write the music or conduct the orchestra, the university is handing him a hammer and forcing him to literally build a piano from scratch using wood and wire.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah, I mean, of course he's going to lose his mind.
And that internal pressure cooker eventually boils over into a really startling dark impulse.
Which brings us to the poisoned apple.
Right, the poisoned apple incident. It is one of the most chilling anecdotes from his early life, honestly.
It's wild.
And it perfectly foreshadows the tragedy to come. So he is being pushed to the absolute edge by his tutor, Patrick Blackett.
Right, the guy forcing him to do the lab work?
Exactly. Blackett is forcing him to do all this menial laboratory work instead of allowing him to attend a highly anticipated lecture by the great Danish physicist Niels Bohr.
Right, so in this moment of sleep-deprived, impulsive rage, he goes into the lab. He takes a green apple, uses a syringe to inject it with potassium cyanide, and leaves it squarely on Blackett's desk.
It's insane.
Think about that for a second. He actually creates a lethal trap for his teacher.
It reveals a deeply unsettling trait if you really look at it. Here is a man who acts on theoretical impulses without immediately grasping the real-world, potentially fatal consequences of his actions.
Because in his head, it's just an idea.
Right. He injects the apple in a sort of fugue state of frustration. It isn't until later, when his mind clears, that the reality of the physical world snaps back into focus.
Like, oh wait, someone is going to eat that.
Exactly. He realizes he has created a lethal weapon and left it for someone to consume. So he rushes back to the lab just in time to snatch the apple away before it can be eaten.
Thank goodness.
But the mechanism of his mind is laid bare right there. He creates a mechanism of death on a pure impulse, only realizing the horror of what he has built after the fact.
It's terrifying when you realize what he goes on to build later in life. But, you know, this whole crisis at Cambridge actually leads to his salvation, weirdly enough.
It does.
Because he manages to sneak into Niels Bohr's lecture anyway. He asks this brilliant, piercing question, and later on, they actually meet.
Yeah, that meeting changes everything.
Bohr looks at this breathless, anxious kid, looks at his clumsy hands and his frantic eyes, and he just gets it immediately. Bohr recognizes that this young man's genius is in the abstract mathematics of this new revolutionary field.
Quantum mechanics.
Exactly. So Bohr tells him, look, get out of England.
Well, where the math is happening.
Right. He tells him to go to Germany, to the University of Göttingen, where the pioneers of theoretical physics are basically tearing apart the classical laws of the universe.
And over in Europe, he finally finds his tribe. He learns the language of this new physics.
Which was totally radical at the time.
Completely. I mean, classical physics, the physics of Isaac Newton, is all about predictability, right?
Right, like an apple falling from a tree.
Exactly. If you throw a ball with this much force, it will land exactly here. That's classical physics. But quantum mechanics is a world of energy, probability, and just straight-up paradox.
It doesn't make logical sense on a human scale.
No, it dictates that particles can be in multiple places at once, that energy travels in discrete packets, or quanta.
Right.
So he immerses himself in a world that defies traditional logic. But as he collaborates with brilliant minds like Werner Heisenberg, he recognizes a really stark reality.
What's that?
The United States is entirely behind. America is still stuck in the 19th century of classical physics. They just don't take quantum mechanics seriously yet.
So he makes this monumental decision. He is going to bring this new theoretical fire back home.
The Prometheus parallel again.
Exactly. He returns to the U.S., splitting his time between Caltech in Pasadena and the University of California, Berkeley.
Right.
And you have to paint this picture in your mind. He starts his very first class at Berkeley in a dusty, forgotten storage room.
Not exactly a grand lecture hall.
Not at all. There are just these scattered chairs, an old piano in the corner, and exactly one student shows up.
One student.
Just one. But he doesn't care. He starts rapid-firing these paradoxical questions, chain-smoking constantly, pacing the room, asking whether light is a particle or a wave.
His teaching style is entirely unconventional. He's magnetic, he's enigmatic, and deeply theatrical.
He puts on a show.
He really does. He doesn't just lecture. He invites students into a shared process of discovery. And word spreads so quickly that one student turns into 5, that it blossoms into packed lecture halls. Students literally start mimicking him, copying his mannerisms, the way he holds his cigarette, even the specific cadence of his speech.
That is wild. He's like a cult leader of physics.
Pretty much. He is practically building an entire school of theoretical quantum physics in America from absolute scratch.
But he isn't alone on campus, right?
No, he's not.
Because next door to his dusty, chalk-filled classroom is the radiation laboratory. And that's run by an experimental physicist named Ernest Lawrence.
Right. Lawrence is a key figure here.
And you really have to understand the dynamic between these two men. It's the classic clash between the mind and the hands.
The theorist versus the experimentalist.
Precisely. Our guy deals in chalkboards, dense mathematics, and abstract ideas about collapsing stars, black holes, and the invisible forces inside an atom.
All in his head.
Yeah. But Lawrence deals in heavy machinery. Lawrence is building massive physical devices called cyclotrons.
Which are huge.
Giant circular machines designed to accelerate particles to incredible speeds and smash them together.
So they're basically two halves of the scientific future.
Exactly. The theory tells the experimentalist where to look, but without Lawrence's massive machines, the math is just scribbles on a chalkboard.
Right. Lawrence constantly reminds his colleague, theory will get you only so far. You eventually have to prove it in the physical world.
And while they're revolutionizing physics inside the laboratory, the world outside is literally catching fire.
Yeah, the 1930s.
Right. We are moving into the heart of the 1930s. And you have to put yourself in the mindset of a young academic intellectual during this time.
It was a turbulent era.
It was. Capitalism appears to be utterly failing. The Great Depression has created breadlines across America. Fascism is sweeping through Europe, and a brutal civil war has broken out in Spain.
And it hits close to home for him.
It really does. As a wealthy Jewish intellectual, he is watching the Nazis systematically persecute his fellow Jewish scientists in Germany, stripping them of their positions.
He cannot remain in his ivory tower of theoretical physics while the world burns.
Right, he has to do something.
He starts stepping out of the laboratory and into the political landscape.
Yeah.
Begins sending a significant portion of his substantial salary to help colleagues emigrate from Germany.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, he supports anti-fascist causes and the Republican fighters in the Spanish Civil War. And in Berkeley, which is, a total hotbed of intellectual radicalism, he begins attending left-wing gatherings.
Mingling with labor organizers and members of the Communist Party. Now, I think a modern listener might hear Communist Party gatherings and immediately think of, Cold War Soviet espionage.
Oh, for sure.
But context is absolutely everything here. Exploring Marxism in the 1930s on a university campus felt like exploring an alternative to a world system that was clearly failing.
Yeah, it's an intellectual pursuit for a lot of these guys.
Exactly. I mean, he read all 3 volumes of Marx's Das Kapital in the original German, but he treated it like he treated quantum mechanics as a fascinating theory to be debated and dismantled.
He loved the ideas.
He loved the concepts of social integration and fighting fascism, but he fiercely resisted being tied down to strict party dogma.
Right. He never officially joined the Communist Party.
Never. He wanted to float above it, keeping his intellectual independence.
When his personal life becomes deeply entangled with this political awakening, too.
Oh, completely.
At one of these gatherings, he meets a woman named Jean Tatlock.
Tell me about Jean.
Well, she's a medical student, a card-carrying member of the Communist Party, and a brilliant, deeply troubled intellectual.
Okay.
Their relationship is incredibly intense, passionate, and just raw. She refuses to accept his polished intellectual persona. She demands complete authenticity.
She sees right through him.
Exactly. There's this famous story where he brings her a beautiful bouquet of flowers, and she just throws them straight into the trash.
Wow. Brutal.
Yeah. She despises traditional, empty, romantic gestures. She forces him to look at the real suffering world.
But it wasn't all just intellectual debates, right? I mean, she had her own demons.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
She suffers from severe clinical depression, so the relationship is highly unstable.
Lots of ups and downs.
Yeah, characterized by intense closeness, followed by periods where she pushes him completely away. And it is during one of these prolonged separations that he meets Kitty.
And Kitty is an entirely different force of nature.
Oh, total 180.
She is a biologist, a fiercely intelligent woman who has already lived several lifetimes by the time they meet. I mean, she has been married multiple times, and she is an ex-communist.
Ex-communist, right.
Her second husband actually died fighting the fascists in Spain. So where Jean is idealistic, brooding, and tragic, Kitty is fiercely pragmatic and fiercely protective.
She knows what the real world is like.
Exactly. She has looked at extreme political ideology and seen how it gets young men killed for absolutely nothing.
So Kitty challenges him in a way Jean didn't. She doesn't want to just debate his theories all night. She wants to see action.
Right.
They begin a passionate affair while she is still married to her third husband.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she gets pregnant, quickly secures a divorce, and they marry. And Kitty becomes the absolute grounding force in his life.
Which he desperately needed.
Yes. She is tempestuous. She struggles with alcohol later on, but she provides a rigid, protective wall around him.
Okay, so let's set the stage here. He has established his physics empire at Berkeley. He is navigating a complex marriage with Kitty, and he is deeply entrenched in the political causes of the day.
Right.
But the luxury of purely theoretical physics and campus politics is about to violently collide with reality.
Because of what happened in Germany.
Yes. Over in Germany, something impossible has just happened. It's 1939. An experimental physicist at Berkeley named Luis Alvarez is sitting in a barber's chair getting a haircut.
Just a normal day.
Right. He's reading a newspaper, and his eyes lock onto a tiny article buried in the pages.
Oh, man.
He leaps out of the chair, towel still around his neck, and sprints across the Berkeley campus to find his colleagues.
Because he knows what it means.
Exactly. German scientists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann have successfully split the uranium atom.
Nuclear fission.
Nuclear fission is no longer a mathematical theory. It is real.
And let's explain why this is so utterly terrifying.
Please do.
In classical physics, the atom is the indivisible building block of nature. You can't break it. The nucleus of an atom is held together by the strong nuclear force, which is the most powerful force in the universe.
Right.
But the Germans discovered that if you fire a neutron into the nucleus of a heavy, unstable atom like uranium-235, the nucleus fractures, it actually splits in two. And when it splits, two things happen. First, it releases a fraction of the immense energy that was holding it together.
The EMC energy.
Exactly, the energy calculated by Einstein's famous equation. Second, and this is the crucial part, it spits out 2 or 3 extra neutrons.
Which means if those extra neutrons fly out and hit other uranium atoms...
Exactly, you get a chain reaction.
Oh, wow.
One atom splits, releasing energy and neutrons, which split 2 atoms, which split 4, which split 8, expanding exponentially in a fraction of a microsecond.
It just cascades.
It cascades. The sudden release of all that binding energy creates an explosion unlike anything humanity has ever conceived.
And when our guy first hears this news, his immediate reaction is just straight up denial.
You didn't believe it?
Nope. He runs to his chalkboard and uses dense mathematics to basically prove that splitting the atom is impossible.
But as Lawrence told him,
theory only gets you so far. Lawrence walks into the room and simply says, Alvarez just did it next door.
wow.
He replicated the German experiment right there at Berkeley.
In that instant, the chalkboard math becomes physical reality. And he instantly visualizes the dark implications.
He sees the bomb.
He realizes before almost anyone else that a chain reaction means an unprecedented world-shattering weapon. And the horrifying reality of 1939 is that the Nazis have a massive head start.
They've been working on it.
They have the industrial capacity, and they have Werner Heisenberg.
One of the greatest atomic theorists alive.
Exactly. He is leading their program.
So the United States government slowly wakes up to this existential threat. They realize, look, we have to build this bomb before Hitler does, or the entire world falls to fascism.
The stakes couldn't be higher.
No. And enter General Leslie Groves.
Oh, Graves.
Now, Groves is the military bulldog who just finished overseeing the construction of the largest office building in the world, the Pentagon.
A massive logistical undertaking.
Massive. He is a gruff, demanding, highly practical Army engineer. He doesn't care about theoretical elegance.
Right, he wants results.
He cares about timelines, budgets, and concrete. So the military places him in charge of what becomes the Manhattan Project, and Groves travels to Berkeley to find a director for the scientific division.
And the initial meeting between Groves and our theoretical physicist is just a legendary clash of personalities.
I can only imagine.
It is incredibly tense. Groves sits down and essentially accuses him of being a dilettante, a wealthy academic with zero real-world management experience.
Which, to be fair, was kind of true.
Yeah, he points out his left-wing associations, his lack of a Nobel Prize, and his arrogance.
And how does our guy react?
He fires right back. He mocks Groves' intellect and asks why Groves hasn't been promoted to a full general yet.
Wait, hold on. You just described an arrogant, left-leaning theoretical physicist who used to be so clumsy he couldn't handle a chemistry beaker.
Right.
Why on earth would General Groves, a rigid military engineer, choose this specific guy to lead the most complex, high-stakes engineering project in human history?
It seems crazy, right? But it's because Groves was a genius judge of character.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He didn't care about the political baggage or the lack of a Nobel Prize. Groves was a builder, and he saw in this eccentric physicist the one thing the project desperately needed.
What was that?
An unmatched visionary who possessed the sheer intellectual gravity, and frankly the ego, to manage the oversized egos of the world's top scientists.
Oh, I see.
Groves wasn't looking for a nice guy or a conventional manager. He was looking for a conductor who could read the entire score of the symphony.
And the physicist understood exactly what Groves needed right away. He told Groves that to beat the Germans, you couldn't have scientists scattered across the country in dozens of different university laboratories communicating by mail.
It's too slow.
Way too slow and totally insecure. He said you had to bring them all to one place, a secure, centralized laboratory.
And he knew just the place. He loved the remote deserts of New Mexico, where he had actually spent time recovering from an illness in his youth.
Right.
So he proposes building a secret city from absolute scratch on an isolated mesa called Los Alamos.
Now, think about the sales pitch he has to make here. You are an elite, comfortable scientist at Harvard, Princeton, or the University of Chicago.
You're doing well.
You are doing highly prestigious work. Suddenly, this charismatic physicist shows up at your door and says, look, I can't tell you exactly what we're doing, but I need you to pack up your entire family, leave your prestigious job, and move to a muddy, chaotic construction site in the middle of a desert.
It's a tough sell.
You will be surrounded by barbed wire and armed military guards. You will live in uninsulated wooden shacks, and you can't even tell your relatives where you are.
It sounds like complete madness.
Totally.
But he is the great salesman of science. He actually convinces them. They flock to the desert.
It's incredible.
They build a school, a church, a commissary. They build a town purely dedicated.
You have hundreds of the brightest minds in the world locked together. And immediately, there is a massive culture clash between the military and the scientists.
Because they operate completely differently.
Exactly. General Groves insists on strict military compartmentalization. He demands that the scientists working on the trigger mechanism cannot talk to the scientists calculating the uranium core.
To prevent espionage, naturally.
Right, military logic. But the scientific director knows that science dies in a vacuum.
Yes. Theoretical breakthroughs happen at the chalkboard, through debate, through cross-pollination of ideas.
You have to talk to each other.
Exactly. So he constantly fights Groves on this, pushing back against the rigid military bureaucracy to keep the scientific process flowing.
How does he do that?
He organizes massive colloquiums where everyone shares their findings, much to the absolute fury of the military intelligence officers.
And the internal strife isn't just with the military brass, it's with the scientists themselves.
Right.
Enter Edward Teller.
Oh boy. Teller.
Teller is a brilliant, highly emotional, and stubborn Hungarian physicist. Teller looks at the atomic bomb they are trying to build, a fission bomb, and basically decides it's mathematically boring.
Boring. The atomic bomb.
Yeah. Teller becomes completely obsessed with what he calls the super-fusion bomb.
And let's differentiate those real quick. We talked about fission, splitting a heavy atom apart.
Right.
Fusion is the exact opposite. It is taking light atoms, like hydrogen, and squeezing them together with such unbelievable pressure and heat that they fuse into a heavier element.
Which releases...
Releasing energy thousands of times greater than fission. It is the exact process that powers the sun.
Wow.
Teller essentially wants to build a star on Earth.
But here's the catch. To trigger a fusion reaction, you need the heat of a fission bomb just to start it.
Right.
So Teller is literally refusing to do the math for the weapon they are actually tasked with building because he wants to design the next more terrifying weapon.
Which makes everyone else mad.
Other scientists are furious. They are demanding Teller be fired for insubordination.
And this is where we see the director's unique, highly manipulative management style.
What does he do?
He doesn't fire Teller. He realizes that if Teller leaves Los Alamos, he might become a wild card. Or worse, he might lose his motivation entirely and go to the press.
That makes sense. Keep your enemies closer.
Exactly. So he indulges him. He gives Teller a small team and permission to spend his time researching the hydrogen bomb, keeping him engaged, keeping him inside the wire.
A very pragmatic leadership decision.
It is, but it allows Teller's obsession with the super to fester something that will come back to completely destroy him later.
Meanwhile, a much darker threat is circling him. Because of his left-wing past in Berkeley, military intelligence officers do not trust him at all.
Not even a little bit.
They are tapping his phones, following him, opening his mail. The most terrifying of these officers is a man named Boris Pash.
Yeah, Pash was intense.
A ruthless, deeply anti-communist intelligence officer. And here is where the director makes the most arrogant, fatal mistake of his entire life.
So, before moving to Los Alamos, he had a casual conversation in his kitchen with a close friend, a French literature professor named Hakan Chevalier.
Right.
Chevalier casually mentioned that a British engineer named Eltonton had a method for passing technical information to the Soviet Union.
Now remember, the Soviets were American allies fighting the Nazis at the time, but sharing atomic secrets was strictly illegal.
Treason, basically.
Right. The director immediately shut the conversation down, calling it treason.
Okay, so he did the right thing in the moment. He refused.
He refused, but he didn't report the conversation to military security. He thought he could handle it himself.
Oh, man.
Months later, as the security pressure at Los Alamos mounts, he finally mentions Eltonton's name to military intelligence. But when Boris Pash interrogates him, he tries to protect his friend Chevalier.
Bad idea.
He invents an incredibly clumsy, elaborate lie about an unnamed intermediary approaching 3 different scientists on the project.
Why on earth would a genius do something so unbelievably stupid?
Hubris. Pure hubris. He believed that because his mind was so vast, and because he was so utterly essential to the success of the bomb, he could outsmart the military intelligence apparatus.
He thought he was untouchable.
He thought he could dictate terms to the security state. But Pash is an interrogator. He sees right through the lie immediately.
Of course he does.
General Groves eventually forces him to name Chevalier, exposing the lie on tape. This single arrogant fabrication plants a dormant seed that will be cultivated for his total destruction years later.
And right as this military pressure is peaking, he is hit with a devastating personal tragedy.
Yeah, this part is incredibly sad.
He receives news from outside the wire. Jean Tatlock, his former lover, has died.
Oh, no.
She had been suffering from severe depression and demanded to see him one last time. Against all security protocols, he had actually slipped away to San Francisco to meet her.
Risking everything.
Right. He told her he was married to the project and to Kitty, and that he couldn't see her anymore. Shortly after, she is found dead in her bathtub, having taken a fatal dose of pills.
The news completely breaks him. I mean, he collapses in the snowy woods of Los Alamos.
He blames himself.
The man who deals in abstract equations is suddenly crushed by profound physical guilt. He is convinced his rejection pushed her over the edge.
And this is where Kitty's raw pragmatism comes to the forefront.
She does not hold back.
She doesn't. She finds him in the snow, distraught, weeping, completely non-functional. But she doesn't coddle him.
What does she do?
She grabs him by the collar. She tells him, you don't get to commit the sin, then have us all feel sorry for you that it had consequences.
That is brutal.
She demands that he pull himself together. Why? Because thousands of people on that mesa and the outcome of the global war are relying on him.
She snaps him out of it.
She forces him to compartmentalize his profound grief and return his mind to the bomb.
And the momentum of the bomb cannot be stopped by human grief, even when the geopolitical reality changes.
Yeah, because Germany eventually falls.
Exactly. When Germany surrenders and Hitler commits suicide in his bunker, the project doesn't slow down. The machine has been built, and it demands to be used.
The target simply shifts from Berlin to Tokyo.
The time for chalkboards and theories is over.
Which brings us to July 1945.
Right back to the desert site from our opening.
The site they named Trinity. It's the night before the first atomic test.
And the weather is terrible, right?
Awful. A fierce, unpredictable lightning storm is lashing the desert basin. The tension is just unbearable.
Because they have that gadget sitting up on the tower.
Yes, they have hoisted the gadget, this terrifying wire-covered metal sphere containing the plutonium core, to the top of a 100-foot steel tower.
And if lightning strikes it?
If lightning strikes that tower, the firing mechanisms could short-circuit, detonating the bomb prematurely while the scientists are still setting up the diagnostics.
The psychological weight pressing down on these men in the dark is staggering. They are about to unleash a force never before seen on Earth.
And how do they cope with it?
They engage in a morbid coping mechanism. A betting pool.
A betting pool.
Yes. The legendary Italian physicist Enrico Fermi is literally walking around the base camp taking bets on whether the bomb will ignite the atmosphere and end all life on Earth.
Wait, they actually thought they might destroy the world.
It was a theoretical possibility early on. Edward Teller had run calculations suggesting that the heat of a fission explosion might be so intense that it could fuse the nitrogen atoms in the Earth's atmosphere.
Oh, Mike.
If nitrogen started fusing, it would create a runaway chain reaction, literally setting the sky on fire, wrapping the entire globe in plasma.
But they figured out that wouldn't happen, right?
Hans Bethe, another brilliant physicist, reran Teller's math and assured everyone that the chance of atmospheric ignition was near zero.
Near zero.
But put yourself in that bunker. Imagine standing in the dark and a mathematician tells you that the chance of utterly destroying the Earth and every living thing on it isn't zero, it's near zero.
That is terrifying. What do you do with that information?
How do you push the button? It's an impossible godlike burden.
But General Groves doesn't care about near zero.
Nope. Groves demands results. President Truman is at the Potsdam Conference waiting for word on whether he has a superweapon to use against Japan and to threaten the Soviets.
So the director consults his meteorologists. He predicts the storm will break by dawn.
And it does.
The countdown begins.
The scientists retreat to their bunkers miles away. In the pitch black of the early morning, they are rubbing thick sunscreen onto their faces.
Sunscreen in the dark.
Yeah, and holding heavy pieces of welder's glass over their eyes. The needle on the arming mechanism drops. The automated voice over the loudspeakers counts down the final seconds. 10, 9, 8.
The breathing in the bunker completely stops.
And then,
Zero.
but there is no sound.
Right, because the blast is miles away, so the sound hasn't reached them yet.
There is only light.
A silent, terrifyingly brilliant, unnatural light that turns the pitch-black desert night into a blinding midday sun. Through their dark glass, the scientists watch as the roiling plasma expands. It's contorting into these hellish purples, greens, and scarlets.
Like something out of a nightmare.
The fireball climbs into the sky, vaporizing the steel tower instantly, sucking up the desert floor into a massive, churning mushroom cloud.
It is a moment of awe-inspiring, terrible, sublime beauty.
And they watch this in absolute dead silence for almost 40 seconds.
40 seconds of silence, and then the shockwave hits.
Boom.
A deafening physical roar, a wall of compressed air ripping across the desert floor, knocking grown men off their feet, shattering the silence with the sound of 1,000 thunderstorms.
And in that blinding, silent light, as he watches the fireball rise into the stratosphere, his mind retreats to his vast reading of ancient texts.
The Hindu scripture, right?
Yes, a line from the Bhagavad Gita echoes in his head. Now I am become death, destroyer of worlds.
The theoretical has become physical.
The Promethean fire has been stolen?
The scientists erupt. They celebrate. They weep. They dance in the dirt. They have achieved the impossible. They have harnessed the basic power of the universe.
But the true horrifying cost of their success is about to be violently demonstrated to the rest of the world.
Because in August 1945, the military loads the weapons onto planes. The news arrives over the radio back at Los Alamos, Hiroshima.
And then 3 days later, Nagasaki.
The war is won. The United States has unleashed the atomic bomb on 2 Japanese cities, incinerating tens of thousands of civilians in a fraction of a second.
The military sees a triumph.
But the scientists who built the weapon are suddenly faced with the grotesque reality of their abstract math.
This massive internal conflict culminates in one of the most chilling scenes of his life.
The victory speech.
Yes. He is called to give a victory speech in the Fuller Lodge at Los Alamos. The wooden hall is packed to the rafters with young, ecstatic scientists and their families.
They're all cheering.
As he approaches the stage, the crowd begins stamping their feet on the wooden bleachers. It's a rhythmic, deafening, oppressive sound that builds and builds like a military march.
He steps up to the podium and delivers the lines they want to hear. He tells them he's proud of them. He says he only wishes they had developed it in time to use against the Germans.
And the crowd just goes wild.
But as he looks out at the cheering, euphoric faces, he experiences a terrifying, waking psychological break.
His mind turns against him.
Completely. The mind that was always so capable of visualizing the unseen suddenly snaps. The roaring sound of the cheering cuts out. The silent, blinding white light from the Trinity test floods the room, washing out all the colors.
He's hallucinating.
Yes. He looks at the smiling faces of the young scientists, and in his mind, the flesh seems to melt and stretch away from their skulls.
Oh, that's horrific.
He tries to walk out of the room, and as he looks down, he hallucinates his foot stepping into the brittle, charred remains of a human corpse. He looks into the shadows and sees a young woman weeping uncontrollably. He sees a brilliant scientist vomiting outside in the dirt.
It is a total hallucination of horror.
Mm.
And this is the exact moment the Promethean guilt fully takes hold.
He realizes what he's done.
He has given humanity the fire, and he is now realizing the eternal torture that comes with it. He can no longer compartmentalize his elegant equations from the flesh and blood reality of burning cities.
He is racked with a profound, unshakable guilt. He realizes he has opened a Pandora's box that can never be closed.
So he seeks an audience with the highest power in the land to try and put the lid back on.
He travels to Washington to meet with President Harry Truman in the Oval Office.
Right.
He goes in nervous, wringing his hands. He pleads with Truman to establish international arms control. He warns Truman that the monopoly on the bomb won't last, that the Soviets will soon build their own, and it will trigger an arms race that could end the world.
And Truman's reaction.
Truman dismisses the Soviet threat completely, arrogantly claiming they don't have the engineering capacity.
So naive.
Finally, the physicist, his voice trembling, looks at the President of the United States and says, "Mr. President, I feel I have blood on my hands."
And Truman's reaction is just a brutal masterclass in state power.
Oh, it's so cold.
Truman looks at him with ice-cold disdain. He pulls a folded handkerchief from his breast pocket, offers it across the desk, and essentially says, "You think anyone in Hiroshima or Nagasaki cares who built the bomb? They care who dropped it. I did."
Taking the responsibility right out of his hands.
Exactly. And as the scientist is escorted out, Truman is heard instructing his aides, "Don't let that crybaby back in here."
Wow, crybaby. It's a devastating reality check. He went in there carrying the tragic hero complex. He wanted to bear the moral weight of the atomic age like a modern Prometheus.
But Truman brutally strips that illusion away.
Truman enforces the political reality. The scientist who builds the weapon is just a mechanic.
Mechanics do not dictate geopolitical policy.
Exactly, and they do not get to claim the moral grandeur of the weapon's use. The machinery of the government has taken the bomb, and they have absolutely no further use for the philosopher who built it.
He refused the role of a policymaker inside the Oval Office. He tries to use his immense post-war fame to influence the public from the outside.
Because he's famous now.
Oh, he becomes the most famous scientist in the world, the father of the atomic bomb, appearing on the cover of Time magazine.
Right.
He uses his platform as the head of the powerful General Advisory Committee to urge international transparency. And, crucially, he uses his influence to fiercely block the development of Edward Teller's hydrogen bomb.
Super.
Yes. He argues that an H-bomb is a weapon of pure genocide, with an explosion so vast it has no defensive military value. It can only be used to wipe out entire regions.
But in taking this moral stand, he makes powerful, dangerous enemies.
He does.
He clashes with the Air Force, which wants bigger bombs. He alienates former colleagues like Teller, who are desperate to build the super. And most dangerously, he crosses a petty, deeply ambitious government official named Louis Strauss.
We really have to understand Louis Strauss.
Tell me about him.
Strauss is a self-made man, a former shoe salesman who worked his way up to becoming an admiral and a founding member of the Atomic Energy Commission.
Quite a climb.
Yeah, Strauss is highly intelligent, but he's deeply insecure about his lack of formal scientific education. He craves the respect of the elite scientific community, but they view him as just a bureaucratic suit.
And there are two key incidents that cement Strauss's absolute hatred for our physicists.
The first one is at the pond, right?
Yes, a quiet moment by a pond at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton. Strauss is trying to play the power broker, eagerly introducing the physicist to the great Albert Einstein.
Right.
The physicist walks over, exchanges some quiet words with Einstein. Then, Einstein walks right past Strauss, his face grim, ignoring Strauss completely.
Just snubs him.
Snubs him entirely. Strauss, consumed by his own paranoia and insecurity, becomes convinced that the physicist just poisoned the great Einstein against him.
Which is wild. And the second incident is incredibly public.
The congressional hearing.
Right. During a congressional hearing regarding the export of radioactive isotopes to Europe for medical research, Strauss argues that shipping isotopes is a massive national security risk.
And our guy just humiliates him.
Effortlessly, he takes the microphone and mocks Strauss in front of the entire committee. He famously quips that isotopes are less useful for making an atomic bomb than a shovel or a bottle of beer, and only slightly more useful than a sandwich.
A sandwich.
The entire hearing room erupts in laughter. Strauss smiles politely for the cameras, but inside, he is seething with a vendetta that will literally define the rest of his career.
Strauss is vindictive and he is infinitely patient. He waits until the political climate is absolutely perfect.
The 1950s.
Right. By the early 1950s, the Cold War is freezing over. The Soviets have successfully tested their own atomic bomb, shocking the American public. Senator Joseph McCarthy has whipped the nation into a paranoid, anti-communist frenzy.
And Strauss sees his opening.
He orchestrates a plot to strip the physicist of his security clearance, which will effectively silence his voice in government and remove his opposition to the hydrogen bomb.
But Strauss is a creature of Washington. He's way too smart to hold the knife himself.
Oh, totally.
He quietly feeds the physicist's massive FBI file filled with all the wiretaps and surveillance from the Los Alamos days to a rabidly anti-communist former staffer named William Borden.
And Borden takes the bait.
Borden reads the file, becomes obsessed, and writes a letter to the FBI formally accusing the father of the atomic bomb of being an active Soviet agent.
This explosive letter forces the Atomic Energy Commission to act. They set up a security clearance hearing. But it is vital to understand this isn't a fair trial in a court of law.
Not at all.
It is a shadow trial. It is a bureaucratic assassination specifically designed by Strauss to destroy the man's credibility. It takes place in a shabby, suffocatingly small office room in Washington.
The optics are terrible.
And the physicist's lawyers are denied security clearance, meaning they aren't even allowed to look at the classified evidence being used against their own client.
The prosecution is led by Roger Robb, a terrifyingly sharp, aggressive lawyer handpicked by Strauss. Robb doesn't care about the physics. He cares about inconsistencies.
He wants to trip him up.
Exactly. He uses the transcripts of those old wiretaps to tear the physicist's past to pieces. Robb zeroes in on the Chevalier incident, that clumsy lie told to military intelligence years ago.
It comes back to haunt him.
He traps him in his own contradictions. Robb paints his moral qualms about the hydrogen bomb not as the agonizing conscience of a scientist, but as deliberate, calculated sabotage of United States military superiority.
The psychological toll of this tiny room is immense. The physicist is exhausted, beaten down, watching his entire life's work and his loyalty to his country be twisted into treason.
And then comes the ultimate betrayal.
Edward Teller takes the stand.
Teller is still deeply bitter that his old boss didn't support his hydrogen bomb project. When the prosecutor asks Teller if he believes the man is a security risk, Teller delivers the fatal blow.
What does he say?
He doesn't directly accuse him of being a spy, but he says that his actions were confused and complicated. And Teller concludes with a devastatingly polite twist of the knife.
Right.
He says, "I feel that I would like to see the vital interests of this country in hands which I understand better and therefore trust more."
Roach.
It is the ultimate betrayal from a fellow scientist.
But there is one moment of incredible, blinding defiance in that shabby room. When Kitty takes the stand to testify, she is brilliant. She is steely.
Kitty does not back down.
Roger Robb tries to bully her, trying to trap her in inconsistencies about her communist past and her husband's donations in the 1930s. But Kitty, drawing on that fierce pragmatism, refuses to yield an inch.
She runs absolute rings around the prosecutor.
She corrects his grammar, she laughs at his simplistic, paranoid view of ideology, and she defends her husband with a fierce, unwavering loyalty. It is a masterclass in holding one's ground against state intimidation.
But despite Kitty's brilliant defense, the outcome is predetermined by Strauss's design.
It was rigged from the start.
The board votes to revoke his security clearance. His voice in government is officially silenced. The man who gave America the ultimate weapon is cast out of the very government apparatus he helped create.
He returns to Princeton, graying, diminished, just a ghost of his former self.
However, history does have a long arc of justice.
It does. Years later, Louis Strauss is nominated by the president for a highly coveted cabinet seat.
He thinks he's won.
During his Senate confirmation hearings, Strauss thinks he has reached the pinnacle of power. But the truth about his manipulation, his petty vindictiveness, and his secret orchestration of the shadow trial is suddenly exposed.
By a scientist, right?
Yes, a brave scientist named David Hill testifies before the Senate, laying out exactly how Strauss used the security apparatus to settle a personal vendetta. Strauss is publicly humiliated on national television and denied his cabinet seat.
The bureaucratic orchestrator of the downfall is brought down by his own hubris.
The political battles, the vendettas, they eventually fade into the history books. But the philosophical horror of what was created in that desert remains, and that brings us to the final, most terrifying realization of this story.
The core theme running through this entire narrative is the concept of the chain reaction.
Right.
In physics, a chain reaction is when one split atom releases neutrons that cause other atoms to split, releasing exponential, unstoppable energy.
But in this story, the chain reaction isn't just about atoms. It applies to human actions, to geopolitics, to our very nature.
How so?
One mathematical discovery in Germany triggers the building of a secret city in the desert. Building the bomb triggers the incineration of Hiroshima. That bombing triggers the Soviet pursuit of the bomb, which triggers the development of the hydrogen bomb, creating an escalating global arms race that spirals completely out of human control.
And it highlights the ultimate tragedy of the scientific mind. He was a genius of the theoretical world. Because he could understand the complex mathematics of the universe, he arrogantly believed he could control the chaotic politics of men.
He really thought he was in charge.
He thought he could lie to military intelligence and get away with it. He thought he could reason with a president like Truman. He thought he could dictate exactly how his world-ending invention would be used.
But he learned the hardest lesson of all. Once the rock is lifted, you cannot control the snake beneath it.
And this culminates in the final, haunting revelation of the story. Do you remember that conversation by the pond in Princeton?
The one with Einstein?
The one between our physicist and Albert Einstein. The conversation that made Einstein walk away looking utterly defeated. The one that triggered Lewis Strauss's paranoid vendetta.
We finally learn what was actually said.
Right, and he wasn't talking about Strauss at all.
Not even a little bit. He approaches the older Einstein and reminds him of those terrifying calculations they reviewed years earlier at Los Alamos.
The calculations where they feared that detonating the very first atomic bomb might cause a runaway fusion reaction that would ignite the atmosphere and destroy the entire world.
He looks at Einstein, he looks past the pond, in his mind's eye seeing the escalating global arms race, the silos filling with intercontinental ballistic missiles, the stockpiling of thermonuclear weapons capable of wiping out humanity 1,000 times over.
And what does he say?
He says to Einstein, "I believe we did."
Wow. I believe we did.
Me?
It is a chilling, apocalyptic realization. They didn't destroy the world in a sudden, spectacular flash of atmospheric fire in 1945. But by building that first bomb, they started an unstoppable, slow-motion geopolitical chain reaction. A reaction that will eventually, inevitably, end in nuclear Armageddon.
The story leaves us with the horrifying imagery of a world consumed by expanding nuclear arsenals, accompanied by the relentless, accelerating sound of those stamping feet from the wooden bleachers, marching us all toward the inevitable end.
So what does this all mean for you and me today?
That's the real question, isn't it? Every time humanity invents a new, world-altering technology, whether it's the black box of artificial intelligence, the manipulation of genetic engineering, or something we haven't even dreamed up yet, are we just lifting the rock again, completely confident that we can control the snake?
It's a terrifying thought.
The tragedy of this American Prometheus is a profound warning echoing from the New Mexico desert. It tells us that humanity is far, far better at unleashing the hidden power of the universe than it is at controlling it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today. Until next time, keep looking